She's right, you know. I mean, he just lingers. Like a squeaky drawer you never fix. That was Denise's friend Marla, her voice slicing through the soft clatter of forks and crystal. They were huddled near the champagne tower, 3 glasses in, swaying in that smug rhythm women get when they think they've won. Then Denise's voice, sharper than any flute. Exactly. He's just an old part, like one of those coffee mugs from the 90s. Faded, chipped, but God forbid you throw it out because it's got sentimental value. More laughter. Tinkling, knowing, cruel. And Harold stood 6 feet away behind a velvet curtain, frozen mid-step, with a dessert plate in his hand. 1 chocolate tart, 1 lemon square. He'd even brought her favorite, the lemon. He didn't flinch. Not then. He just let the words roll over him like smoke under a door. Instead, he turned, walked to the corner of the ballroom, watched the band tune a Miles Davis riff, posed for photos, kissed Denise's cheek during the group shot, made a toast so gracious it made the caterer cry. And at 2:11 a.m., when the last valet had driven off and the string lights dimmed, Harold stepped into his study and placed the lemon square, still untouched, on a saucer beside his desk. He opened the file cabinet and pulled out the leather-bound folder labeled Control Chain Contingency. Blew the dust off. Denise had always loved calling him sentimental. She never understood that memory, real memory, isn't soft. It's a ledger. And Harold? He kept excellent records. He turned to the first page. The organizational map of the company he co-founded in 1989. The same firm she now strutted through like a self-crowned queen. The hierarchy had changed, but the founding agreements had not. Clause 4.2b. Conduct materially harmful to the reputation of the founding board. He smiled. By the way, over 90% of people hearing this story aren't subscribed. If you enjoy these kinds of sharp turns and satisfying payoffs, subscribing helps our team bring more of them to life. And trust me, it gets a lot darker from here. Denise hadn't always been cruel. Once, she was careful, elegant even. But after Harold stepped back for health reasons 2 years ago, she'd become louder, cockier. She took the word emeritus and used it like a muzzle. Told everyone Harold liked being out of the loop, that he spent his afternoons bird-watching. He did, occasionally, in the same park where he quietly met Roger Ellison, the incoming chairman of the company's parent firm. They'd known each other since grad school. Harold brought him a sandwich and a copy of the company's internal ethics policy. Highlighted. Roger read it, folded it, nodded. You sure? No, but she is. Back at the anniversary party, Denise had cornered the CFO's wife and boasted about the expansion initiative she spearheaded. The one Harold started 7 years ago. She always pretended not to hear his name mentioned in connection with it. But what she hadn't pretended not to hear, the laughter, the echo of her own petty little punchline, repeated all evening like a curse disguised as a compliment. He's just an old part. She was right, in a way. Harold had been around too long. Long enough to see everyone's patterns. Long enough to install the very mechanisms now humming to life quietly beneath her world. He looked at the lemon square again. Still untouched. He pressed a button on the landline. Yes, a landline. And left a single voicemail. Roger. Initiate Phase 1. Use 4.2b. Monday. All hands. I'll bring the original charter. He hung up. In the hallway outside his study, a photo hung of their 25th anniversary cruise. She looked happy. He looked distracted. Even then, he didn't take it down. Not yet. Not because of nostalgia. Because some reminders belong exactly where they are, until it's time to make them mean something else entirely. Denise always liked to joke that Harold had become scenery. The kind of corporate relic you dust off during holiday parties, but otherwise keep in the background, like a vintage lamp no one plugs in anymore. The day they moved him to an advisory role, she even gave him a mock award at the quarterly luncheon, a plaque shaped like a rocking chair. Laughed with the whole room as she handed it over. He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He just set the plaque on the side table in his office and quietly closed the door. Not just to the room, but to an era. What no one realized, not Denise, not her new wave of strategic thinkers, not the marketing VP who wore sneakers with suits, was that Harold wasn't sentimental about his title. He was territorial about his foundation, about legacy. He didn't need to bark to be heard. He just needed leverage. So he built it. His evenings shifted. He stopped taking calls after dinner. Said he was tired. That he was working on a book. Denise didn't question it. Why would she? In her mind, he was retired. Relegated. Replaced. In reality, Harold was reconnecting with Roger Ellison, the quiet but sharp incoming chairman of the conglomerate that had acquired Harold's firm years ago. Roger wasn't flashy, but he understood structure and loyalty. They met at Harold's old downtown office, the one Denise didn't know he still kept under his name. "This is a ghost move, Harry," Roger said after the second meeting, looking over a spreadsheet printed in fine courier font. "You sure she's worth all this effort?" Harold sipped his tea. "She's not. But the company is." Roger exhaled. Clause 4.2b. "You always were thorough." They got to work. Harold assembled a small, airtight team. One legal, one compliance, and one digital. None of them under 40. Each had worked with Harold during his prime. Each owed him a favor. And each understood the assignment with surgical precision. He handed out old documents like they were maps to buried gold. Board succession flowcharts, dormant clauses in the operating charter, side agreements signed during merger talks that Denise and her new cohort never even knew existed. He'd written half of them himself. Clause 4.2b was the key. It had been inserted in 1992 after a founding partner was caught leaking internal projections to a rival firm. The clause allowed the board to immediately restructure leadership, without vote or warning, if any executive engaged in conduct materially harmful to the reputation of the founding board. It was rarely used. Too vague, too nuclear. But vague was perfect. Because he's just an old part wasn't just a joke. It was public, witnessed by multiple board family members, and documented. One of Denise's own friends had posted it as a video on her story, a 7-second clip of Denise mid-toast, smirking. "He's like one of those mugs you just can't throw out," then raising her glass. The clip was captioned, "Queen Denise." Harold's team had the video downloaded, transcribed, archived, and watermarked in 4 formats by noon the next day. Denise thought she was winning. She had the CFO's ear, the product SVP wrapped around her finger, and was planning an offsite with the HR lead in Aspen. She liked to say, "Harold had his time. Now we're modernizing." She didn't know that Harold had already recovered his original voting rights via a dormant shareholder clause activated once his direct descendants reached 30% internal equity. Their sons had inherited shares from Harold's late brother, the result of a quiet stock reallocation done during the dot-com crash to avoid tax exposure. And last month, their eldest had turned 33, meaning Harold, by proxy, now held controlling interest again, meaning all her little chess moves? Just theatrical. Every week that passed, Denise got bolder, louder. At a Q2 strategy session, she dismissed Harold's comments about regulatory risk as museum talk. The room chuckled. Harold didn't speak again for the rest of the session. But afterward, he sent Roger an email with 2 attachments. 1, the Q2 recording. 2, the original company mission statement. Subject line, evidence of behavioral drift. 4.2b, review trigger. Roger's reply was just 1 sentence. "Let's set the table." Saturday morning, sunlight was spilling through the breakfast nook like it was auditioning for a furniture catalog. Denise, still in her silk robe, twirled a spoon in her yogurt and chuckled. "You should have seen your face last night. You look like someone swapped your champagne for pickle juice." Harold folded the newspaper. "Just a bit tired. 40 years of smiling wears down the cheek muscles." She laughed again, this time with a little snort. "Oh, please. You didn't say a word during the cake cutting. The whole room thought you'd forgotten your name." He offered a slow smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe I had." She didn't catch the tone. She never did. Instead, she kissed his cheek absent-mindedly and announced she'd be spending the day at the spa with Nadia. "Detox from all the anniversary carbs," she said with a wink. "And you, try not to get lost in your crossword." By 10:30 a.m., the house was quiet. Harold changed into his old blue blazer, the one with the faint tear behind the left cuff, from a meeting where he punched a wall in 1996. That blazer always reminded him who he used to be, and who he still was, when necessary. He drove out to the country club. It was the kind of place with leather armchairs older than most of the waitstaff, where servers still addressed members by title and no one dared use Bluetooth speakers near the pool. Harold never stopped paying his dues. Inside the private conference suite, Roger was already seated. Next to him, 2 board members, both quiet, both watching Harold like chess masters evaluating a surprise move they hadn't seen coming. Roger didn't waste time. He slid a red folder across the table. Stamped confidential. Embossed in gold. Title, Restructuring Proposal, triggered by derogatory public remarks. Harold opened it, scanned the first page, then looked up. Roger leaned back, fingers steepled. "She really said it?" "She did," Harold confirmed. In front of 2 directors' spouses, 1 supplier's daughter, and just to make it poetic, our former general counsel's son, who, incidentally, recorded it. One of the silent board members, Janice, from the audit committee, let out a short breath through her nose. Not quite a laugh. More like a signal. This is happening. Roger flipped the folder shut. The clause holds. It's vague, but it's written that way for a reason. She handed us the rope, Harold said evenly. All we're doing is letting gravity finish the job. The second board member, Gordon, spoke for the first time. Do you want the announcement made at the top of the all hands? Or should it come after quarterly projections? Top, Harold said. Cold and clean. Roger nodded. Monday morning it is. The conversation shifted. Legal sign-offs, compliance handovers, key card revocations, asset transfer memos. All quiet. All already in motion. It wasn't a coup. It was a contingency, one long prepared for and waiting only for her to stumble into her own spotlight. Meanwhile, across town, Denise was soaking her feet in eucalyptus oil and gossiping about which wives might be secretly on Ozempic. She had no idea the company car registered in her name had just been flagged for asset inventory, that her corporate Amex had a scheduled freeze-dated Sunday at 11:59 p.m., that the private calendar she thought was only hers had already been mirrored for documentation. And the irony? She had handed the trigger to Harold with a flute of sparkling rose still in her hand. By late afternoon, Harold returned home. He hung up his blazer, made himself a pot of strong coffee, and watched the cursor on his laptop blink next to the words. Confirmation, reinstatement of executive chairman role, effective Monday 9 a.m. He hovered for a second, then clicked send. At 6:02 p.m., Denise texted from the spa. Nadia's daughter got into Colombia. Can you believe it? Anyway, don't forget to take your blood pressure pills, Redheart. Harold stared at the screen, then typed a reply. Congratulations to her. And no worries, my pressure's under perfect control. He didn't smile, but he did allow himself one indulgence. He reopened the video from the anniversary night and replayed that 7-second clip. He's just an old part, like one of those mugs. The laughter, the tilt of her chin, the way she glanced around for approval. Harold paused it, let it sit there, then minimized the window and opened a checklist titled, Final Phase, Execution. Sunday morning began with a mimosa and a lie. Denise was up early, fussing with her hair in front of the mirror while humming some off-key pop ballad. She wore a cream blouse she insisted made her look youthfully formidable, a phrase she'd picked up from a self-help book she never actually finished. Her phone was already buzzing with brunch confirmations. Brunch with the Queens, she called out to Harold, who was seated in the study sipping black coffee without cream. You coming? He looked up. Don't want to be the only guy at a gossip table. She rolled her eyes like he was a sitcom husband. I'll tag you in the cute photos. Smile emoji. Looking forward to it, he said, and turned back to his screen. She left. He didn't watch her go. Instead, he pulled up a dashboard with 5 open windows and a blinking scheduled delivery status bar at the top. 9:30 a.m. 5 confidential emails. Each hand-assembled, each watermarked, each laced with just enough metadata to prove receipt and internal timestamp. No CCs, no BCCs, and certainly no Denise. Legal, briefed and pre-cleared for clause execution. PR, given 2 versions of the press release, depending on whether Denise tried to spin her removal as personal leave. Compliance, handed the documentation from the party, plus a digital folder labeled Supplemental Evidence, which included internal chat transcripts, 3 off-record remarks from town halls, and 1 photo of Denise restructuring staff at a private dinner, next to a wine bottle labeled Wife Boss Energy. Everything was sterilized, clinical, no emotion. At the same time, Denise posted a filtered boomerang of her champagne flute clinking against Nadia's. Caption, Recovery Squad clinking glasses love this tribe. Hashtag Brunch Queens. Harold wasn't in any of the photos, but she tagged him anyway. Image maintenance. At 10:03 a.m., the board reset, Phase 2 group chat lit up. Roger sent a thumbs-up emoji and a screenshot confirming that the HR system had accepted the leadership update and indexed it against Clause 4.2b. 1 minute later, Janice from Audit replied with a photo of the signed physical memo. Effective immediately, executive oversight to Harold G. Baxter, per Board Resolution 112D. Elsewhere on the back end, Denise's executive assistant's access was quietly reclassified. 2 access cards, hers and the assistant's, were flagged as pending termination. They'd still open doors for now, but the logging system would show a pattern. The goal wasn't to shut her out abruptly. Not yet. The goal was to build a record. If she protested later, they could show a full breadcrumb trail of compliance. At 10:41 a.m., IT changed one minor credential, just a single string of code that disabled Denise's override access to the cloud-based shareholder directory. She wouldn't notice immediately, but if she tried to issue a statement under company header tomorrow, it would bounce. Harold stood from his desk and went to the kitchen, made himself eggs, listened to the birds outside, read the paper. At 11:12 a.m., Denise posted another picture, this time a group shot with 4 other board spouses, all in pastels, all squinting under the patio umbrellas. Caption, "What a year. Celebrating milestones and sisterhood." Still no Harold in sight, but his name was tagged, because she wanted it to look intact. In her phone calendar, a recurring reminder buzzed. Monday, 9 a.m., all hands executive briefing. She hadn't bothered to open the agenda. She never did. At 11:58 a.m., Harold received a text from Gordon, one of the board's quietest but most respected voices. "Clock's ticking. You ready?" Harold replied. "Been ready since she called me a mug." Then he muted his phone and walked outside. The brunch table was giggling over something Denise had said about Harold's low-tech flip phone and how she was going to get him an Apple Watch for their next anniversary, if he even knows how to wear one. Nadia laughed. Poor Harold. Still thinks VPN is a radio station. Denise smirked, lifted her glass, and clinked it against another. Her smile lingered, just as her system password expired in the background. It was the sort of brunch Denise lived for. Outdoor terrace, overpriced champagne, women in coordinated shades of beige pretending not to compete. The server had just delivered her second mimosa when Denise launched into her favorite version of Friday night. So Harold toasts me with this vintage Bordeaux. I'm talking real sentimental, and then just stands there like a statue while everyone claps. I swear, if I didn't know better, I'd say he rehearsed being that emotionally constipated. The table burst into laughter, performative and perfectly timed. Denise's bracelet jingled as she raised her glass. 40 years, ladies. You keep them quiet, and they stay obedient. Like old dogs who know which couch they're not allowed on. More laughter. Nadia did her fake gasp and leaned in. You're wicked. Realist, Denise corrected with a wink. Then, from down the table, Marla, ever too informed for her own good, cut in with a little too much edge. Did you hear about the emergency board slot freeze? The clink of forks stopped. Subtle, but sharp. Denise blinked. Excuse me. Freeze. Board seats. Gordon mentioned something last night at drinks. Said Roger flew in under the radar and blocked further appointments. No warning. Just slammed the brakes. Denise's smile faltered. That's not possible. I had 3 new directors lined up for Q3 onboarding. Marla shrugged. Apparently not anymore. All of them got emails this morning. Deferred. Denise laughed, but it was off rhythm. If this is some joke. It's not. Came another voice. Layla, the CFO's wife. Usually silent and soft-spoken. Roger called for a Monday morning all-hands. Said it was mandatory. Gordon canceled golf. Denise straightened in her seat. No one tells me these things. Layla raised an eyebrow. Maybe they thought you already knew. Denise's fingers twitched for her phone. She fired off a message to Harold. What's going on with the board freeze? Did Roger blindside you too? She hit send. Nothing happened. She checked the signal. Full bars. She tried again. Message failed. Confused, she switched over to the company server. Tried to log in through the portal. Her credentials spun for a moment. Then, access denied. Her thumb hovered. She pressed it again. Same result. No access. No redirects. Just, you don't belong here anymore, in corporate language. A chill crept down her spine. Nadia tried to keep the conversation moving. So anyway, the dessert tray was gorgeous. That lemon square was. Excuse me, Denise muttered, standing abruptly. The waitress, who had been lingering nearby, stepped forward and gently placed something on the white linen in front of her plate. A folded piece of paper. Cream stock. Familiar handwriting. See you Monday. H. It didn't feel like a note. It felt like a detonator. Denise stared at it for a beat too long. The table fell quiet. Marla looked from the note to Denise's face. Is everything okay? Denise tucked the note into her bag like it was radioactive and tried to laugh. It's nothing. Just Harold being Harold. But her voice cracked midway through. The air shifted. She knew it. They all did. Because brunch had turned. No longer a celebration. Now a preamble. She opened her phone again. This time she dialed Harold directly. 1 ring. 2. Voicemail. No callback. She tried his assistant's number. Out of service. She looked up and noticed Layla staring. Not with concern, but curiosity. Like she'd already read ahead in the book and was just waiting for the next chapter. Denise sat back down slowly, her mimosa untouched. The laughter didn't resume. Neither did her appetite. Denise arrived before sunrise. Not because she was nervous, at least, that's what she told herself, but because appearances mattered. She wore navy today. A power color. Not too bold, not too soft. Just enough edge to remind people who ran the room. The atrium at headquarters was quiet, the polished marble echoing with every confident click of her stilettos. Her driver had dropped her curbside as always. She nodded at the janitor, swiped her access badge at the side elevator. The light blinked red. She tried again. Red. She pressed the intercom. Nothing. Her finger hovered, and for the first time in years, she had to walk around to the main entrance like a visitor. The receptionist, a young intern she'd once scolded for microwaving salmon, looked up nervously. Ms. Baxter, it says you need to sign in. Denise blinked. Excuse me. He gestured to the touchscreen. I think your profile's been temporarily reclassified. She stared at him. He shrank back. Slowly, deliberately, she signed in. Visitor badge number 0429, printed with a cheerful beep. She didn't wear it. She folded it in half and slipped it into her coat pocket. As she made her way up the stairs, no elevator privileges now, she ran through explanations. Temporary glitch. System update. Maybe IT rolled back credentials over the weekend by mistake. Her hand hovered near her phone, but she didn't call anyone. Not yet. She pushed open the double glass doors of the boardroom. Everyone was already seated. That never happened. Roger Ellison sat at the head, flanked by Gordon and Janice. Harold was to his right. Harold, not in the corner, not off to the side like a ceremonial bust. Right, there, in a seat that hadn't been assigned to him in over a year. Every chair had a folder, dark blue leatherette, the same kind they used for quarterly restructurings or mergers. Nothing casual ever came in dark blue. As Denise stepped in, the room went still. No greetings, no nods, just silence. Roger didn't even look up at first. He tapped the folder in front of him with a single finger, steady and slow. Then, without ceremony, he spoke. This meeting is now in session. His voice was dry, legal, practiced. Denise took her seat, the only one left, the one furthest from the screen. Roger continued, reading from a page. Per Clause 4.2b of the Founding Board Charter, specifically relating to conduct materially harmful to the reputation of said board, the following action has been reviewed and authorized. He paused, looked up. His eyes met hers, just briefly, then moved on. Effective immediately, operational control is reinstated to Harold G. Baxter as executive chairman. Denise opened the folder. Inside, a formal resolution. Signed. Stamped. Annotated. A screenshot from that Instagram story. A transcript of her quote. Witness statements. Her own voice turned weapon. Her chest tightened. She glanced across the table. Marla avoided her gaze. Gordon looked at his watch. Janice stared straight ahead, expression unreadable. Roger cleared his throat again. This restructuring has been documented and approved by a majority quorum and reviewed by compliance and general counsel. Legal is prepared to issue a press statement today. Dead silence. Denise opened her mouth to speak, but found nothing. Harold didn't even look at her. He didn't need to. He simply reached forward and turned his folder over, revealing the company seal. The seal she had once considered ornamental. The room sat in suspended quiet, waiting for someone to crack, to challenge, to deny. No one did, because they all knew it was done. Not pending, not proposed. Done. And she was still wearing her power navy, sitting in a room that no longer belonged to her, with a voice that no longer mattered. Denise didn't move for several minutes after the meeting adjourned. The boardroom emptied in a hush, polite nods exchanged like currency no longer valid in her hands. No one lingered. No one offered condolences or even curiosity. Chairs scraped, folders closed, and silence swallowed her. She waited. Waited for someone, anyone, to pull her aside and whisper that this was a mistake, a temporary maneuver, something that could be undone. But the door clicked shut, and she remained seated in the chair farthest from the screen, the one that had once been Harold's. The chair that stayed empty after he left, because no one invited her to follow. Eventually, she stood. The hallway outside felt colder than usual. Her heels no longer echoed like power, they scraped. She passed her assistant's desk, expecting eye contact, a whisper, an update. The desk was empty. No personal items. No notes. Just a dark monitor. She checked her phone again. 5 missed calls she'd made. None returned. She tried Sarah, the VP of marketing who used to praise her every visionary move. No answer. Then Peter, the COO who once flirted with her on retreat number 3. Straight to voicemail. Her email wouldn't load. She opened her calendar app and found nothing. No events. No entries. Just a blank, white screen with a cheerful message. Looks like you have some free time today. Her jaw tightened. She took the stairs down to the executive floor, hoping the IT team might have insight, or at least access. But even the junior staff avoided her gaze. 2 interns she didn't recognize exchanged glances and ducked into a side room as she passed. Near the garage level, she spotted her driver, Greg, loading luggage into one of the company's sedans. "Greg," she snapped, marching over. "Why didn't you bring the car around?" He froze, then stood straighter than usual. "Ma'am, I've been reassigned." Her face hardened. "By whom?" "Fleet operations. This vehicle is now scheduled for Mr. Baxter's use." She laughed. Short, sharp. "You're joking." He looked apologetic, but firm. "I'm sorry. I was told to inform you this morning." "You were told? Why didn't you call me?" He hesitated. "I didn't have your new contact designation. I assumed they already reached out." Her fists clenched around her purse strap. "Fine. I'll get a rental." But when she returned to her office, her actual office, the corner space she'd once renovated with bespoke Italian furniture, she found the door open. A banker's box sat on her desk, labeled in careful handwriting. Inside, a framed photo from a conference in Monaco, a branded pin set from her 10-year anniversary, a glass paperweight shaped like a lion. Everything dusted, neatly arranged. On top of the box, a single sheet of paper. Return of assets agreement, pending signature. In the margin, a printed note. This includes the company vehicle and condo. Her breath caught. The condo. Her penthouse, perk, just 5 blocks from HQ. The one she held meetings in. The one she bragged about during panel interviews, calling it her urban sanctuary. Technically company-owned. Technically under corporate housing, tied to her executive status. Which, as of this morning, didn't exist. She sank into the desk chair. Not hers anymore, she realized. Just a chair. For the first time in her career, she wasn't just out of the loop, she was out of the building. Her contacts were silent. Her calendar was empty. Her access revoked. Her name, likely, already scrubbed from the internal wiki. Denise Baxter, founder, visionary, chief operator. Now, visitor number 0429. The restaurant was Harold's choice. Quiet, old school, with leather booths and a waitstaff that still wore vests and called you sir, without irony. He arrived first, naturally. Chose a corner table near the window. No flash. No view. Just privacy. His sons arrived 5 minutes apart. Eric, the eldest, had Harold's jawline and Denise's fire, though he'd learned to temper it. He slid into the booth and gave his father a wary nod. "You all right?" Harold simply tapped the folder resting beside his coffee cup. "We'll get to that." Matt, the younger, had more of Denise's features, but none of her flair. He looked perpetually like he was studying you, watching for flaws. He entered with cautious energy, like he wasn't sure if this was lunch or a deposition. When the waitress left after taking their orders, club sandwich, Cobb salad, black coffee all around, Harold pulled out 2 identical folders. Slim, clean. One labeled personal. The other, corporate transition documentation, internal use only. He didn't do preamble. "I didn't want to do this publicly," Harold said. "But I wasn't given a choice." Both boys stayed silent. He slid the folders across the table. "She's told you I've been retired, I assume?" Eric nodded, eyes narrowing. "Yeah. Said you wanted out." "I didn't. She wanted me out. And she maneuvered it well. PR spin, advisory title, marginalization disguised as respect." He opened the corporate file, revealing documents stamped and countersigned. Clause 4.2b. Enacted last week. Triggered by public remarks, recorded, verified, and confirmed through board compliance. Matt skimmed the top page, then looked up. "She called you a mug?" Harold nodded once. "An old part. At our anniversary party. In front of board affiliates. In a room funded by the company." Eric's jaw clenched. "She mocked you while writing your name." Harold's gaze didn't flinch. "She stopped seeing me as her partner a long time ago. I just stopped pretending last week." Eric leaned back, lips pressed thin. "She never saw it coming." "She didn't want to," Harold said simply. "Because she didn't think anyone else could see through her. That's the trap with ego. It needs too much applause to hear a warning." He tapped the second folder. Inside, her transition out of operations. "Already accepted. HR is handling logistics." But there's one final matter: ownership structure. Both sons grew still. You inherited shares through Uncle Lou's reallocation, Harold continued. Those shares were held dormant. They're now activated under trustee directive. That makes the two of you majority silent stakeholders, alongside myself. Eric's eyes widened. You mean we? You own more of the company than she ever did, Harold confirmed. I structured it that way for a reason. Matt opened the personal folder. It wasn't legalese. It was clean: an estate memo, inheritance clauses, amended family trust instructions. She's removed? Matt asked, skimming. Harold took a sip of coffee. Not fully. Not yet. But the language is in place. Should she contest, you'll have the documents to make it permanent. Eric exhaled slowly. You waited. All these years. I watched, Harold said. There's a difference. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Eric extended his hand. You've got our support. Both sides. Personal and corporate. Matt nodded. We'll help however we need to. Harold didn't smile. But the relief in his shoulders was visible, if only to his sons. Later that evening, back in his study, his phone buzzed once. A message from Denise. We need to talk. No subject line. No apologies. Just 6 words she'd never had to use before. Harold looked at the screen. The message remained unread. He placed the phone face down and turned back to his paperwork. Legacy, after all, wasn't built on conversation. It was built on control. She sat cross-legged on the edge of the couch in what was, for now, still her condo. The curtains were drawn, the AC buzzing slightly louder than usual, and her laptop screen cast the only light in the room. It wasn't evening yet, but the place already felt dark, quiet, claustrophobic. Denise scrolled through the headlines. Her lips pursed so tightly they looked bloodless. Old part, new power. How a founding executive flipped the board overnight. Mugged by ego, the quote that sparked a corporate coup. Boardroom reversal of the year. Legacy founders reclaim control after viral audio. She clicked one headline, then another. Same quote, same clip, over and over. She'd said it as a joke. 7 seconds. Off the cuff. Meant for wine glasses and inside laughter. But now it had taken on a life of its own. Someone, likely one of the board spouses, had leaked the footage. Maybe even for a payday. A clip from that fateful night. Her voice, slightly slurred but unmistakable, laughing over a jazz track. He's just an old part. Like one of those mugs you don't throw out. Useless, but familiar. The podcast clip had framed it beautifully. Roger's voice calm and surgical as he described Clause 4.2b, then played the recording. The host gasped. One even laughed. You can hear the smugness in her voice. She didn't know she was torching herself mid-toast. It had over 400,000 views in under 24 hours. Commenters weren't kind. She weaponized his silence. He weaponized the charter. CEO cosplay gone wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you don't poke the bear with a founding agreement. Some even turned it into a meme, an old coffee mug with her face on it. Captioned, still in the cabinet, just not allowed near hot things. She refreshed the screen. It had gone up by another 18,000 views since she started reading. Her last shred of leverage had been optics, public image, perception, but now even that had been turned on her. Twisted by the very system she once used to prop herself up. In desperation, she called Mark, a PR contact she'd leaked to before. Left him 3 voicemails. He finally answered, curt and tired. Denise, you've got no angle left. Roger released the full ethics memo. The board preemptively filed disclosures. You try to spin it now, and you'll look even worse. My editor's not touching it. I need a statement. Just one quote, she pleaded. You gave your quote, he said, flat. It's already viral. He hung up. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She scrolled down, stopped at the contact that still read Harold, home. She hadn't changed it. The line rang once, twice, then declined. Not voicemail, just declined. No explanation, no voice, just a digital wall. She lowered the phone slowly, her reflection dim and warped in the black screen. Outside, a car honked. A delivery scooter zipped past the building. The world was moving on. Her condo, the one she designed to feel like a power perch, now felt like a holding cell. The company attorney had already informed her that the deed was under review. Technically leased under executive housing policies. Technically revocable. Technically not hers. She stood and walked to the window. Looked out over the skyline. Somewhere, people were laughing over lunch. Taking meetings. Planning campaigns. And somewhere below, in the quiet hum of the building's lobby, the first of many nameplates was already being removed. She whispered into the glass, to no one at all. I didn't mean it like that. But now it didn't matter what she meant, because meaning was no longer hers to define. It belonged to the audience. And the audience had already decided. The auditorium had been reconfigured. Gone were the branded beanbags, the open mic segment, the forced enthusiasm of culture moments Denise had insisted on during her tenure. In their place, rows of standard-issue chairs, a single podium, and the weight of something more serious, more permanent. Employees filed in slowly, hushed. Something had shifted. Everyone felt it, even those too junior to understand the details. There were rumors, of course, podcasts, Reddit threads, forwarded emails. But what really mattered now was who would walk out to center stage and claim the silence. At exactly 9 a.m., Harold stepped up to the microphone. No music, no introduction video. Just him, standing tall in a gray suit that didn't care about trends or panels or fast-talking VPs. Behind him, the projection screen flickered once, then slowly revealed the company logo. Not the sleek, lowercase rebrand Denise had commissioned 3 years ago. The original. The serif font. The crest. The founding name. There was an audible shift in the room. Recognition. History. Harold adjusted the mic once, then looked out at the sea of faces, some confused, some expectant, a few quietly relieved. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't fumble. He spoke. We're returning to the values we built this on. No slides. No buzzwords. That means no ego. No entitlement. Just purpose. He let it sit for a moment. In the early days, this company thrived because people showed up to do the work, not posture around it. We listened more than we branded. We solved problems instead of assigning blame. Somewhere along the way, that changed. He didn't name names. He didn't need to. We lost something real. So we're bringing it back. You'll see changes. Some of them will be hard. All of them will be necessary. He paused, just once, and his eyes drifted to the front row. The second seat from the left sat empty. Her seat. No reserve sign. No nameplate. Just a subtle gap in the row, like a ghost left the table mid-conversation and forgot to return. He looked at it only for a second, then returned to the room. You've probably heard a lot these past few days. Stories. Quotes. Headlines. What matters is this. We are not a spectacle. We are a business. And that business answers to its mission, not to individual ambition. No applause line. But people clapped anyway. Not thunderous. Not performative. Genuine. He nodded once. Not a bow. Not a grin. Just a signal. That it was over. That it was beginning again. As the team stood to leave, they passed a new wall installation outside the main hall. A reprinted photo from the company's earliest days. 3 founders huddled over a whiteboard, Harold front and center, sleeves rolled. Below it, a simple inscription, respect the roots. Build forward. Back in the corner of the room, a junior engineer leaned to her colleague and whispered, I didn't even know he still worked here. He didn't, the other replied. Now he runs the place. And in the office that used to be Denise's, the lights remained off. The desk had been cleared, the nameplate removed. Only one thing was left behind. A single, unopened envelope with a note in her handwriting. We could have done this together. Harold never opened it. Because some stories, once finished, don't require an epilogue. Just a closed door.